All right, well, I'm going to kick off, and then I think I'm handing over to James after. I can't remember. I'm Sophie. I was first elected in 2018. I decided to stand as a councillor. Basically, I had worked for the Labour Party for a while before, been a member of the Labour Party like my whole life, pretty much. And I worked in Parliament, but that's when we were in opposition, and I got a bit fed up of being in opposition and basically wanted to kind of carry on my involvement with the Labour Party, but do something where I could hopefully kind of do a bit more and get more involved with the community. So that's why I stood. I got selected in the autumn of 2018, and about a week after getting selected, I found out that I was pregnant. So that was kind of interesting timing. And pro tip is don't stand somewhere that's called Forest Hill when you're going to have two pregnancies at the same time as canvassing, because that was quite fun. But yeah, basically that's my background. So I've been elected twice in 2018 and in 2022, and have kind of served as a councillor for 7 years now, and spent a bit of time on the cabinet as well, as the lead for housing and community safety. In terms of managing caring responsibilities with being a councillor, the honest truth of it is it's quite hard. I don't think it's like a role that was designed for like people that have like young children, but I think it's also like really important that we have people of our age group that have young children. And I'll just give like one small example. When my daughter enrolled in school, we had to fill out a form, and we have to give like proof of our address, and everything that they required for the proof of address was like documents that like most people didn't have. Basically, they were quite rare documents, and the only thing you could do is go and get a letter from your GP, and you had to pay something between 5 and 20 quid to get that letter, which was like silly to be asking everyone to pay money, and also like a load of time taken off GPs to do this. So I wrote to officers and said, well, this is just ridiculous, like why are we doing this? And their response was, oh, no one had noticed or thought that this was happening, and then they just changed it. And I just thought, if I wasn't like, if we had more councillors that had young kids that were going to school, they wouldn't have had that process in place for like the last however many years. So I think it's really important that we're there to kind of like, represent the big tranche of our borough that do have like young kids and do kind of try and navigate all of our systems with young kids. In terms of like some tips, I would say, first of all, obviously, like kind of fight for better representation, I think has improved a lot in Lewisham. One of the motions that I passed was about parental leave for councillors, which we now have. We had like a big push over the last term that I was in to kind of try and improve like the length of our meeting times, to try and make sure that, we could have more meetings remotely, which COVID really helped with. I pushed really hard, for example, for like absences, if you're on maternity leave or parental leave, to be labelled as such, not just looking like you're absent, for your constituents. Lots of things like that we've like really tried to make a difference. But I would say there's still a way to go. And part of why I'm keen for people to join who have kids and who know about this is that they can like continue to, to increase the pool of people who like know what it's like and push for change, to make it easier. Practical tips, I would say basically prioritize. Like you could fit an entire like full-time job being a councillor if you wanted. There's so much to do, you could just carry on doing. So I think it's about trying to prioritize, and like also having conversations honestly with your co-councillors, with the whip, etc. Because even though there's some things that might be more difficult, like physical presence in canvassing, it's hard for me to spend a whole day every weekend out canvassing, because otherwise I just like, who's going to look after my kids? But I can spend more time writing ward leaflets, or like I can spend more time doing casework, etc. So I can contribute in lots of other ways, and it maybe try and find a balance with like my ward councillors. In terms of like support networks, I think basically other parents and people in similar situations can be really good support networks. The last term, I know in particular, there were a few of us that had like kids about the same age, and we got together to kind of try and push a lot of the changes that I mentioned, and to kind of make a stand when, like, for example, meetings go on quite late and so on. So I think having that kind of network. I also think the LGA, the Local Government Association, is very supportive of this agenda. It's pushed really hard for like greater support for councillors who have caring responsibilities. So they're a really good kind of support if you want to try and push things along and change things. But yeah, so I think we're all example that it's possible, it's manageable, and I think it's really like good to have people with like that kind of lived experience on the council. But yeah, so I'll pass it on to, I think James is next, and then happy to take any questions later.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Sophie, and hi all, and yeah, nice to see Catford South being represented as well, Alison. My name's James Royston. I'm a councillor for Catford South, where I was elected in May of 2021. And like Sophie, I've been quite involved in the local Labour Party for quite some time, and had back in the day worked in various roles in the Labour Party as well. So I think it's for a long time been something that I've been interested in doing. I was actually elected in a by-election in 2021 and selected at the end of 2020, which was, as you can probably remember, all amidst the pandemic and lockdowns and so on, and probably quite an unrepresentative time because everything was being done remotely. Even canvassing was being done by phone only. But in many ways, that kind of advantaged me because it gave me a helpful insight into how much of your work as a councillor should, at least in theory, be possible remotely. I have two children who are 7 and 1 years old, which means that my second was born while I was a councillor. As Sophie has kind of intimated, there aren't any formal arrangements in law for councillors because we are office holders and not employees. But happily in Lewisham we do have a better system, which I believe means that councillors are given the same rights as Lewisham staff. That does mean that there's only statutory minimum for men, but you can the group can mirror the arrangements of your day job. And I was grateful that that did happen in my case, so I got significantly longer than those 2 weeks. That said, many councillors did seem unaware that I was on parental leave, so I think there's a bit more to be done in terms of communication. And then kind of since then, I've found that it's been significantly harder to juggle councillor work with 2 children than with 1, and has put particularly a huge amount of pressure on my partner, but also it's felt that it's been a huge amount of pressure on me. There are a lot of evening meetings and a lot of in-person meetings and canvassing sessions and so on. Personally, I've become very selective about what counts as a useful meeting and have a pretty high threshold for what I consider a worthwhile use of time. Particularly when I was new, I kind of said yes to everything, and just because I didn't really know what was essential and what wasn't. I also, I think, thanks in large part to Sophie, work remotely whenever there is an option to do so, which kind of maximizes the time that I have to be a parent. I find generally within the council, officers and council staff are happy to meet in the daytime. It often improves their work-life balance as well. So if there's something that isn't a formal meeting, I usually ask for that, and also do casework and so on around my own life arrangements. Councillors can be more varied. There are many councillors who have day jobs that mean they can only work on their council stuff in the evening. So it very much depends on their working arrangements, and that also means that most group meetings and formal council meetings do take place in the evenings. And obviously some meetings must be or are sometimes better in person. I feel there's still not a huge amount of kind of formal support networking within the council, but I think that several of us have sort of developed our own. There are some allowances that are made, or some arrangements that are made that make things easier. So, for example, there are often briefings for the entire council by officers, and those tend to be recorded. So you can watch those on catch up if useful in your own time. I'm also happy to have a flexible employer, which means that I can condense my hours to dedicate my Friday afternoons to council work. And of course, I have a very supportive partner who also used to work in the Labour Party. So we did go in with eyes generally open, although there wasn't a session like this for us beforehand. And yeah, just on a note of optimism, I think kind of Sophie's hinted at this already, but I think demographics of councillors have changed quite a bit in recent years. I think there's a much more diverse group of councillors, and that includes those with caring responsibilities, both parents and those who are looking after others with disabilities or older relatives and so on. And there have been processes in the past year to kind of review our ways of doing things, how we do meetings, and what allowances need to be made. And I certainly hope that will continue, and that's something that will be continuing to contribute to. So that's me. I'll pass over to Aisha. Thanks all.
Thank you for that, James, and hello everyone. My name's Aisha Lahai-Taylor. I'm the councillor for Brockley Ward. Out of the two councillors, I am the newest. I got elected in 2022, which was one of the largest cohorts to council. And just touching on what James said about the diversity of council, I believe it was one of the most diverse cohorts brought in. With that said, I got selected as a candidate literally in February 2022, because I don't know if many people remember, but there was some cybersecurity issues which delayed the selection process to become a councillor in 2021. But nonetheless, I was selected as a candidate in February and had the most intense session to get elected in May 2022. How I found joining council, and I have to be honest, the first year it was a lot. I did not plan to put myself forward as a scrutiny chair, which I did, and lo and behold, was encompassed with a plethora of meetings. It was like 4 out of 5 evenings I was in a meeting, and it wasn't a balanced work life for me for the first year. And subsequently the following year I stood down as being chair, just to prioritize my boys, because my children, they're currently 14 and 12, but at the time my youngest was going through his SATs and I needed to be present for him for that. So I think depending on the age of your children or caring responsibilities, I think you just have to adjust accordingly. Both my boys are now in secondary school, but my eldest will be approaching GCSEs from September. So again, I think I need to prioritize his education, obviously, and more than happy to be a backbencher. With regards to support, again, my boys are fairly teenagers, so I do have a good support network with family. But after the first year, I forgot to mention was that the constitutional was changed, and as a result, the meetings reduced. So all thanks to Sophie and James's lobbying prior to me becoming a councillor, the constitutional changes came into play 2023 to 24, and the meetings reduced as well as committee sizes. So I think I was on like about 4 committees the first year, and that reduced about 2 the following years, which is really ideal, especially if you've got caring responsibilities. Just some tips that I'll share is organize. I'm quite organized as an individual, but I literally have 3 calendars that I work with, be it my personal, my day job, because I do work full time. I'm a councillor calendar, and I combine it onto one, which I just regularly review on a weekly, daily and monthly basis. And prioritize family time. I feel like, yes, council life is important, and we haven't really touched on our duties as Labour Party members within our branches and GCs, and canvassing commitments, but these play a role. And my advice is don't overextend yourself, because again, my children have had key moments in their lives, such as SATs and GCSEs, and I do have to be present for them. I can't just expect them to succeed without support at home as well as school. And you need your downtime as well. I feel like I know many councillors do go on holiday and bring their council work with them, but this isn't really encouraged. It defeats the whole point of being on holiday. So yeah, just representation is important. We are the voices. We represent the collective of Lewisham residents, and having a seat at a table, which was one of my whys for standing as a councillor, is very, very important. And I feel like your voice matters, be it big or small. Partake and participate. And again, Sophie alluded to it, the whip is very supportive with pastoral issues, but there's still more work to be done, and it can only be done if people come forward to support the cause. And that's me. I'll hand it back over to Sophie. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha, and thanks, James. Okay, I'll just, basically that was us. So if you've got any question, the floor is yours.